official business meeting of the Scott County Fiscal Court. Today is August 9th, and I will ask Ms. Stacy Hamilton to call the roll.
Mr. Hofstetler? Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Corman?
Present.
Mr. Ellison? Mr. Pratt?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Mr. Culbertson?
Here.
Judge Covington?
Present. Thank you all. With that said, our first item of business to consider is the minutes from 7:25 and 8:2. Motion from David Livingston, second from Ryan Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Bills and hand checks as presented. Any questions or comments related to those? Motion from Kelly Corman, second from Rob Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Sheriff's fees in the amount of $45,047.83 were submitted. Let the record reflect that. Clerk's fees in the amount of $189,594.57 were submitted. Let the record reflect that document. Number 7, Resolution 2421, Sheriff's Grant. I believe these are for tasers. I'll ask Mr. Cam Culbertson to read the resolution. Then we will have discussion and questions or comments.
All right, Scott County Fiscal Court Resolution Number 2421, a resolution of the Scott County Fiscal Court of Scott County authorizing the Judge Executive to apply for Office of Attorney General Body Armor Grant Program, or BAGP, funds administered through the Kentucky Office of the Attorney General, or OAG, and upon arrival to enter into an agreement with OAG to execute any documents which are deemed necessary by OAG to facilitate and administer the project and to act as the authorized correspondent for this project. Whereas the BAGP assists law enforcement and first responders to purchase body armor, duty weapons, ammunition, electronic control devices, and body-worn cameras, the Body Armor Grant Program will purchase protective equipment for Kentucky Law Enforcement Council, or KLEC, certified peace officers. And whereas Scott County desires to apply for BAGP funds in the amount of $72,797.60 to be used to purchase 20 Axon Taser 7 devices, and whereas it is recognized that an application for and approval of BAGP funds imposes certain obligations and responsibilities upon Scott County, now therefore be it resolved this 9th day of August 2024 by the Scott County Fiscal Court, the Judge Executive is hereby authorized to execute and furnish all required documentation, including a memorandum of agreement as may be required for the furtherance of the above referenced project, and to act as the authorized correspondent for said project, done this 9th day of August 2024.
Questions or comments? Chief Nettles, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you guys?
Appreciate you being here.
Yes, thanks for having me. This is going to be for a purchase of 20 tasers. We currently have 20 Taser 7s that we're asking to purchase that we are equipped with to 55 of our deputies. We currently have 30 tasers that are outdated, up to 10 years outdated, no longer under warranty. The taser lifespan is recommended only for 5 years. With this grant, we're requesting to purchase 20 units for a total of $90,997. We're looking to cover 20% of that cost, which would be $18,199.40.
So just to clarify, the amount on the resolution is correct?
Yes,
okay.
That is correct, yes.
But our match, and you already have that budgeted,
Yes.
It would be $18,000.
$18,000, yes.
It sounds like a...
What happens, Steve?
We can sell them back.
Okay. David wants to buy one. No. I've been tasered. It's not fun.
Questions or comments?
We'll leave that a few questions on
that one. Peter's making notes over there.
I'll make a motion.
So we have a motion. We have a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, motion passes. We will ask for additional information about Mr. Livingston's experience. That leads us to EMS promotion and new hire.
Yes, good morning, Judge Magistrates.
Good morning.
I'm pleased to recommend a promotion and a part-time appointment. The first is Austin Tarter. We're recommending his promotion to paramedic effective August the 17th, and his new pay rate will be $17.90. Also pleased to remind you that Austin is one of the individuals that went through the BCTC program with Georgetown Scott County EMS. And as a matter of fact, we just had the pinning ceremony on Wednesday, so a very positive thing. In addition, Zachary Hisk is recommended as a new part-time paramedic. He'll begin employment on August the 12th at $17.17 an hour. So we're presenting those two recommendations to you.
Questions or comments? I have one comment. I guess it was Thursday night. Wednesday night.
Yeah.
The pinning ceremony. Jeff and I were there. Of course, all the EMS staff, and there were 9. And Chris, if you'd like to comment, but there were 9 members of the first paramedic class that has came through our program, our collaborative effort with BCTC and our agency, and 100% pass rate for all 9. We've hired 4 out of that group. So I'm just really proud of what the court did, the leadership the court had, and then I'm very proud of our agency, the collaborative effort on training, and then the quality of training. 100% pass rate. I mean, that shows you that those folks going through that class are getting the information and getting it in a manner that helps them get through that class. So, you like to comment?
Just to echo what you said, Judge. And it's unheard of to have 100% pass rate on the first attempt from the National Registry. So, we're extremely happy about that. We also have 5 full-time EMTs that have enrolled in the paramedic class that starts on August 20th.
How many?
5. So this time next year, hopefully we'll have 5 more. And for the first time since COVID, we actually have more paramedics than we have EMTs.
So that's huge.
That's huge. Yeah.
And we have talked about trying to address this issue and knock on wood. But I think this program is going to help us. And
absolutely.
And the other thing is opportunities for young people. It's presenting that and a great career and opening doors. So
yeah,
I'm proud, very proud. Thank you all. Any comments or questions? All right.
I want to ask Rick's question that he always asks.
In honor of Rick, where does that put us in staffing?
We're fully staffed.
Very good.
So that recommendation is presented to you for approval.
So we've got a motion, we have a second.
I don't have a motion.
We didn't have a motion? David with the motion then.
Second.
Second from Rob. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
That leads us up to exciting thing number 9. I'd like to ask for your approval to put out and advertise a bid for the tennis court / pickleball courts that was presented to you via email. And the question that I ask you all is what would be the pleasure of the court if you all want to approve this advertisement. In the past, we have purchased Musco lighting off the Sourcewell competitive bid cooperative purchasing program, and Musco did the lights previously that are there. Do we want to include the Musco portion of the lighting separately and go through the Sourcewell? That would probably be my recommendation. And Drew Beckett's here with us. Drew, you've got a lot of experience with this. Would you step up and, if you have any comments, what questions would anyone have about what was presented, and then would anybody make any comment or such about the lighting?
I would go through the grant process. I mean, it's going to save you money.
through that Sourcewell, and it's pre-bid out. It's kind of like unit pricing that's pre-bid out.
Shouldn't take much more time either, would be my other.
I don't think so. And the setup, from what Ramona Fry with Element Design presented, would be a carbon copy of what's there already. It'd be 2 on the outside on each side, and then 2 lights in the middle that are multi-directional going to both sides, the 2 in the middle. So,
Judge, when we originally designed the park, and David can attest to this, we had originally had 8 courts that was planned for this. When we got into a pump station issue, we had to readjust our cost, and we eliminated 4 of the courts. But when that was done, it was set up that the electric would be run to hook for the additional courts in the future. And so, we have Musco. I think that's probably the best route to go.
knowing that they know the footprint.
Correct.
And that they're already there.
So would you do this as bid alternates? Like, would you do the courts, lights, resurfacing?
So the bid would be for the construction of the additional 2 tennis courts and 8 pickleball courts, the fencing, the painting, striping, and then we would go through the alternate would be the painting and restriping and filling of cracks on the current 4 courts. They've been there 5 plus, and it's really short-sighted if we don't try to be proactive to prevent those from getting cracks and deteriorating. So, Drew, would you comment on that? Because you've seen many.
Yep, I've been out there. I've not a lot to say back to that. I think that's a great idea. And again, if you're not going to do it now, it's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
And that was Tim Tevis's recommendation as well.
Yeah. And JR's been out there a lot, and there's not a lot of cracks, but there's a few that need to be addressed. And then, just so you know, on the proposed plan, Ramona's using some existing fencing on the pickleball side of the tennis courts that are already there. The asphalt will butt up right next to the existing 4 courts, and there won't be any concrete. You have that concrete sidewalk down the middle. We won't have a concrete sidewalk. It's going to be all asphalt, and it's just less expensive that way.
I would say one other benefit.
Yes, sir.
The current court you have, they've tried to make pickleball lines on the tennis courts and then pinning down the nets, which ruins both, really. I mean, you're damaging nets and
I was gonna say, I don't
tearing
know
up the courts.
I've seen them out there playing
Yeah.
pickleball on the tennis
Yeah.
courts now.
which is fine. But it just, your nets are going to last longer for tennis,
Yeah.
and you don't have to hold them down for pickleball and things
Yeah.
like that. So you'll have designated spaces for both.
And having 8 pickleball courts, I think it's just, I think it's just the right thing to do.
They got parking there for all that.
Well, if we roll this out and we need to have additional parking, then we'll cross that bridge when we do. But the high side there, it would be a place we could probably put some additional parking in the future.
What JR, what they did when we needed additional parking for softballs, they went out there and put gravel down and rolled it and all that stuff, whatever.
But I think right now, get this built, and I'm telling you, I'm very confident that
You
they're.
got a time frame?
Like, I'd like to get it done this fall. But the whole thing is, can you find somebody that will bid on it? And hopefully we'll get multiple bids, but then that has the time to do it this fall before the asphalt plant shuts down. But I think we helped ourselves greatly by grading it out. They'll have to do some extra grading on the one side, but not a lot. So I do think we helped ourselves.
And this will allow the school system to host KHSAA stuff.
6 courts will allow them to have high school tennis matches at that site.
Hey, Drew, do we have any pickleball leagues yet?
Leagues, I mean, there's plenty of open play. We don't really have the space to do
Right.
many leagues.
I think it's going to be so popular. I just wondered if we're going to have a scheduling issue or you don't think so?
Nothing's an issue.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. We'll have 8 more courts than we've ever had. So
No, that's great. I just there's so many people talk about it. I'm just
But that could be an option, Drew, that we set up leagues.
Sure.
You know, like
you could even host tournaments if you
Yeah.
want. Another thing to bring people to town.
Yeah.
So,
but out there at Griffin Gate, it's they have to schedule.
so.
Busy all day.
Rob Jones.
To have this park right there to see how many people are actually using this park, and we actually had the need for it.
Oh,
For the court to see that and get it done. It's pretty good.
No, I think it's awesome.
And I think ultimately, if we have to create a schedule, that's probably a good problem to have. That means that, you know,
Right.
our people, our citizens are enjoying our park, so.
No, 100%. So is the pleasure of the court to put the construction out, the bids out for just the construction, and then do the lighting through the Sourcewell competitive purchasing program?
I'd make a motion we do that.
We got a motion. Second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, Drew, you can't sit down now. You got to get back up. Yep. So, equipment purchase for disc golf, and you know, just going back, this was something that Magistrate Wallace brought up some time ago. We've been looking at it, and then a few months ago, some individuals from Frankfurt reached out to Chip Southworth, and it's really been a blessing because they love disc golf, and it's the Frankfurt Disc Golf Association, individuals from there that offered to help us plan this course, and they're gonna flag all the site. I shared with you all this document, which is just the course layout. You have 9 holes on the Scott County Park side, and you have 9 holes on the Brooking Park side. And Drew, would you like to comment? We were out there last Friday with Chad and us, and
yeah, it was a wonderful field trip. 3 gentlemen from the Frankfurt Disc Golf Association. Let me just say, those guys know what they're doing. I mean, they obviously are very passionate about it. It's an exciting opportunity for me, I think, just to add another activity into our parks. Brooking Park, of course, is pretty full, but the way they have the holes lined out, you're going to see parts of the park you wouldn't normally. If you go there just to see the playground, you're not going to see the rest of the park. But if you go and do disc golf, it's going to take you pretty much throughout half or 3/4 of Brooking Park, which is neat. And then my favorite part is the other 9 holes are across the street in Scott County Park. So that's one of our lesser utilized areas, but still beautiful. They have holes designed that are going over ponds. It's really well thought out, well laid out. Chad, if Joe Pack can probably attest to that too. Just where the holes are, how it's going to look. It's only going to add. We can do tournaments. We can do all kinds of different things, but it's another passive play or active option there at our parks.
And what they shared is that there's, like they will create an app. Well, they will put our course on an app for us, and disc golfers that travel look for these opportunities to get off and play disc golf. And I mean, what they do is pretty sharp. But like, what made me very impressed was the placement of the tee boxes. They put them in shaded areas under trees, and then you have to go around trees. You got to go over water, but the placement does not, it's not interrupting anything else. It's not going to prevent us from putting in a playground or doing something else that we want. It's just a very, very smart, I think, layout, and the total cost is very inexpensive. If you're talking about, I think $18,000 was a high estimate that was on this spreadsheet that I shared. So what I would ask you all is to approve the construction and the allocation of the funds. We already have the money in our budget. What Drew will do for us from Parks and Rec side is he's going to take care of all the purchasing. Parks and Rec staff, and then I think Tim and might try to twist JR's guy for a guy couple guys later this fall when it slows down, cools off a little bit, to go out and pour the tee boxes and then put in the baskets. And of course there'll be some signage, but Drew's going to take care of all that, and then he'll send us the invoices, and we'll reimburse Parks and Rec through that. That was what Stacy and I talked about being the easiest route. Questions or comments?
The last thing I'll say that we talked about is the price of these have doubled since they looked at it originally.
Oh, they have?
Well, no. Not for what you have is accurate, but
okay.
From when they started this process,
oh, Lord.
From when they started the process, it doubled. So just that was my offer to Judge Covington. If we can go ahead and get it done, they're only going to get more expensive. So if we can buy it now, if we're going to do it.
The tea baskets is what they really thought last Friday was like, go on and purchase those.
Yep. Because
really everything else is not that.
Right.
But and they've asked and requested that they would like to use, and I told them I'd bring this to you all, but they'd like to use the old clock tower head, the cupola that's out there. We saved it on purpose, just because but they want to put it out there in the park as one of the holes, like you would throw into the clock tower. So, but that's we can talk about that later. But they do want to.
I think when we do our putt course, that's what.
I do have a question about. I have a question about the ponds. That's something I didn't think about, but looking at it, what happens when these frisbees discs ultimately land in the water?
What do you do when your golf ball goes in the water?
Well, it sinks to the bottom, but these things float.
No, they sink.
Oh, do they really?
So yeah, what we were told is they become fish habitat if you throw one.
I didn't know that.
So if you're not good, I'd suggest throwing it around the pond.
But there is a layup there on both spots. There's a place to lay up if you want to. Yeah,
y'all should have made the tunnel a hole. Like throw the ball, throw it through the tunnel.
We spoke about that now, but we have no idea how you'd control the traffic. Somebody walking through get drilled with the disc.
And then my last thing, and I guess this is really also for Chief Nettles. I go out fishing with my kids a lot, especially on the Great Crossings Park. Maybe for you too, on the Great Crossings Park side, on that upper pond. I don't know, whatever the other pond. Especially when they do catfish releases, and I mean, people drive on that walking track. I mean, somebody's gonna get hit. So I was out there 2 weeks ago, and there was 3 cars parked all the way around that pond. So there's, I don't know how we stop it, but
I don't either. We can look into it. About the best thing.
It's called spike strips.
Deputy Pratt.
Special deputy.
Remember we had Deputy Burke at one time.
Drew, thanks for your help and on this. Any other questions, and would there be a motion? Motion from Mr. Wallace, second from Mr. Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Now that leads us to what I handed out to you all. The ordinance 2208 is our existing ordinance, and all I want to do today is continue our discussion about short-term rentals. And Lori, I asked Lori to be here. Lori has been on vacation. We're glad to have her back safe and sound. But I wanted to talk to Lori before we move forward with very much. And Lori, would you step up and comment? Jared and I did a phone conference with Lori yesterday a couple times, and we shared the Jefferson County ordinance with Lori, and Jared and I looked really closely at that. And really and truthfully, our existing ordinance is very comprehensive, but there's about 3 or 4 things that we could add that would help us. And I think the goal is to promote compliance with the ordinance, and then what can we do to promote the short-term rentals being good neighbors and good citizens, and the vast majority of them are. And regretfully, had the situation out that we discussed I think it was Ridgeview, correct, Kelly? And, that would concern me too. But if you will look, I just wanted to put our ordinance back in front of you, but then I wanted to share, and I shared 2 copies. It's separate pieces of paper, these separate pieces. And it's what Lori and I and Jared talked about yesterday, of things that we could possibly add. Lori, you want to speak to those? And I didn't give you a copy of that, but it's what we talked about.
Okay.
And if you want a copy, I have a copy. I'm sorry.
Just to have it in my phone.
Yes. And thank you for being here.
I'm glad we got
So number one is a possible addition. If the property is subject to 2 or more substantiated civil violations, not complaints, violations, or the host is found to have twice violated or failed to comply with an applicable provision through 2467 with respect to given property within a 12-month period, the director may revoke the registration. For purposes of this subsection, a civil violation shall mean a final, unappealable code enforcement order. When the director revokes the registration pursuant to this subsection, the owner and host shall be notified of the revocation and shall have 30 days in which to request an appeal. Appeals can be heard pursuant to provisions set forth in Chapter 2, Article 7 or 6 is if no appeal is requested, the revocation shall become final on the 31st day after the initial action of the director. Civil violations include, but are not limited to, violations of building, safety, property maintenance, nuisance, health and sanitation, fire, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical codes. And then E, when any owner or host has a short-term rental registration revoked, they shall be ineligible to receive a new registration for 1 calendar year from the date of revocation. That's just straight out of the cities, and we didn't have that. Correct, Cam?
That's correct.
And one other thing that we discussed yesterday was Jefferson County's actually has a section about criminal violations. And we can share that.
That's not in.
But that's not in the cities. That's not in the cities. Lori or anyone else want to comment on what?
Well, I'm just thinking here through this, Judge. So if it's a violation of code enforcement, that's generally our code enforcement are done between hours of 8 and 4. And so the parties are probably going to be taking place afterwards and at night. And so I don't think the sheriff's deputies have the right to issue a civil violation. It would have to be more of a criminal violation that would be in violation of a potential existing ordinance clause with the criminal part in it. You see what I'm saying? So if most parties are going to happen at night, then the people they're going to call is the police. And if they're continuing to do this, then maybe we should include the criminal part that would subject these folks that are, breaking these ordinances to be in jeopardy of their losing their license.
So we can pull that criminal section and send it to you all this week for you all to review. But that criminal part is not in the cities.
Do you take any action, Lori, if there are existing criminal violations or violation of noise ordinances or whatever for somebody that's doing a short-term rental? Do you currently have the authority to do anything to them? Okay.
I have no teeth.
Okay.
But the Jefferson County is one simple line. I've got it here. Criminal complaints include, but not are limited to, reported drug activity, theft, and criminal mischief.
So saying
it's
if they
one
do
very
that,
simple
then you
line.
can revoke it.
So that's
I'm not the one who can revoke
Well,
anybody's registrations or license.
it's not creating a new criminal penalty for violating the short-term rental ordinance. It's just saying if you commit some sort of criminal offense, that can result in a revocation. Okay.
So,
yes, that's correct.
That sounds like good language.
So reading the city's excerpt that we just read, when the director revokes, that's not you, that's the code enforcement director?
It can be code enforcement, or it can be revenue commission director, Scott Hall. Because registration is done through
Registration is done through them.
Yeah.
So if you're going to revoke the host, they can't have short-term rentals. What's the difference between a short-term rental and a criminal investigation on a long-term rental? I mean,
None.
if a house is getting called to on long-term and there's drug activity, you're probably gonna get into a big issue there, if you ask me. I'm just asking that question. Because what's the difference?
So,
But is there a kind of license for, there's not a kind of license for a long-term rental.
But if you're
You know,
going,
you see what I'm saying? No, I mean, but you're right. I mean,
but if you're gonna
we
revoke
have
this
more
license
issues
for
with
them,
long-term rentals
yeah.
With SO and PDD.
They should have a business
but
license.
should have a business license.
what's designated here is for the short-term rental, which is 29 days or less.
Right.
But I see what you're, like, please know,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, but for the like, I think the long-term rental, you know, that would just fall under the criminal complaint, and the sheriff's office would pursue.
But what would keep from revoking them people from ever renting a house again or a piece of property?
Their business revoking their business license.
That we don't have a long-term rental ordinance that addresses it. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I want to go down that, I don't want to go down that.
At that point, you're talking about condos, apartments,
Yeah,
talking about a lot of.
About 40% of.
I mean, I'm
yeah.
just having Airbnbs ourselves. We have no control what happens at that house when those people, we're going through a host, and we try our best to watch them. But we don't know what they do behind closed doors. We can't monitor inside the house. They rent that, and that's their personal property for that time.
And that's one of the things that Judge Covington and I talked about yesterday, was adding language requiring language on the platform when they're a host and they're on the platform, to put language in there that says, you know, certain things you can only.
So that's what I'm going to talk about next.
Go ahead.
So let's talk about that. So duties of host, general restrictions. It shall be the duty of the host under the article to ensure that there shall be no more than one contract per short-term rental at a time. Short-term rentals shall not be allowed on any area not considered a primary dwelling, RVs, tents, garages, boats. There should be no signage on the premises of the short-term rental advertising or identifying the short-term rental in a residential zoning district. The name, telephone number, and the email address of the emergency contact as identified in the annual registration shall be posted within the short-term rental. Any host using a hosting platform shall include the valid Georgetown Scott County Revenue Commission issued registration number for the short-term rental in the short-term rental advertisement. And then Section F, short-term rental occupancy is limited to 2 adult guests per bedroom, plus no more than 2 additional adults. And I cut it off at that. I think if you got 7 bedrooms, 7 times 2 plus 2, that tells you your occupancy. The Georgetown one puts a cap on it. I think the cap is the bedrooms.
They cap it at 10.
They cap it at 10.
I have a question about B, or the first B, the short-term rentals, no recreational vehicles, tents, garages, boats. Like, I know somebody that has a glamping site on the Elkhorn, has no air conditioning. I wouldn't do it because
The
I don't have
Great
air
Crossings,
conditioning.
that's gonna cut them out.
Yeah, like, it's a nice, like, tent, it's a tent, but it's there 24/7.
But, so that's why we're talking about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't think about a glamping site that's next to the creek or
I
something.
wouldn't be
but-
shocked if somebody had like a barn or a large garage that has a space in it.
living space above, and that
And
to
I've
me
stayed
that
in
would
those
qualify.
before, too.
Because I've got a friend that has a place down at Lake Cumberland, and it was a storage building. It was actually electrical business, and he bought it to keep some stuff in with, and his friends keep their RV in it, and then it has an apartment in there as well that he VRBOs.
So
I can address why the city went back and added that in. We had 2 large RVs parked in front of someone's yard in one of the neighborhoods here.
But
And
that,
it was causing issues.
but doesn't the city ordinance cover that anyway?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't have to be in here because the city ordinance covers that anyway.
But they wanted to just make sure that it was inside the ordinance. And we have had a couple of instances where somebody decided that they were going to rent their garage out. And the garage was not set up for, it was not livable.
Which would be a code enforcement problem.
Exactly.
So if it was a garage and they applied for a short-term rental, do we do any kind of building inspection or anything? Because, you know, there's codes for windows, and I'd hate to see somebody get trapped in a bedroom in a fire and no way to get out, you know?
To my knowledge, the Revenue Commission does not do any on-site inspections.
When I'm thinking about garages, I'm thinking about large-scale metal buildings that they may finish off a portion of it, not like a garage, my two-car garage that I decide to throw a bed in and say, come rent.
But I've seen those too, and like I said, they're not putting any windows, they're not putting any escapeways out. There was a fire in the building, so.
But building inspection,
Laws for all buildings.
But if it's already built and they run a short term, nobody's doing an inspection, a follow-up inspection to see if it's ready.
do they have to apply for a building permit when they go in and make renovations on?
But they're supposed to. But see, that.
So that is really already covered then.
It's not really.
They should do it. It's do they do
I
it?
think to Rob's point, because I know exactly what you're saying, and because I've looked at a lot of appraisals over the years, and people will put a divider in a bedroom and say, oh, this is 2 bedrooms, or it's 2 dividers up, and this is 3 or 4 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And there's nobody, once we go down this path, nobody goes out and checks that. So they go down there and say, well, I've got a 5-bedroom house. They probably don't even get on the PVA to even verify it. They probably just take what they say and say, well, you can rent to 12 people or whatever.
And this doesn't just apply to garages. This applies to basements that are unfinished when the house is built, and then they come back and finish it without going through building inspections. And there's no windows in bedrooms.
But
everybody knows you have to have a window in a bedroom.
I like the idea of possibly having a 10-person cap, just for the reason, I think we got to think about the neighbors. And I know this was an extreme event, but she also said that particular house has a lot of different parties for big venues, because they have 18, 20 people show up for, bachelor parties or wedding parties or whatever it is.
Well,
but when you got to be the neighbor that deals with that every weekend, we got to think about those people.
So on the back side, on that next page, host shall include the following. This is down underneath 1. In all advertisement contracts for short-term rentals, a language that specifies the lawful maximum number of occupants for the short-term rental, a clear statement indicating that no parties may be hosted at the short-term rental, and that clear statement indicating guests shall adhere to the city's code of ordinances, not limited to noise, nuisance, traffic, and parking. So we're making them post parties are not allowed. Now, we all know that people don't follow the rules, but
why couldn't you have, why couldn't somebody go rent an Airbnb for a bachelorette or a bachelor party? I mean, there's probably 100,000 bachelor parties that will happen today in Airbnbs, and 99% of them will probably cause no issues. I feel like we're about
Bachelor
to.
party, no issue. You want to massage your house every weekend?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, you're gonna say no. What's the definition of a party?
We've had them at the one across the street from ours. We've never had an issue.
But
I think that's the
people
case.
rent them is to have parties.
That's a big reason.
Let's take a step back there. The main reason that people rent the larger homes with several bedrooms in it, just based on what we're seeing at our office and what we are hearing from our hosts who own those properties, is they are coming as church groups, they are coming as youth groups to go to the Ark Encounter, in addition to a lot of the competitors out at the Kentucky Horse Park are renting those large homes because they want their teams together. From what I understand, the majority of them are not rented for parties. Yes, you're going to have a bachelor party there. Most of the time, and I know of a couple who have said they've had them there, they're out and about. They're not coming to stay in a house What fun would that be? They're going on the Bourbon Trail. They've got, a limo taking them across to the, all across the state to the Bourbon Trail. And then they're coming back.
And they go to bed.
And go to bed.
Yeah, they're
Or walk downtown and grab something to eat or something like that. But the majority of them are not being rented out for party purposes. I just want to,
No,
I want to clarify that.
I totally agree. The horse park brings in a ton of people.
And the ARC Encounter does too. I mean, we're very lucky to be bookended by both of those.
Sure.
That's what's keeping, that is what is
I
keeping the
just want to keep
hotels
in
and the
mind that
short-term
people
rentals
that buy in
alive.
a neighborhood bought their house to be a place that they're not necessarily their neighbor to be a rental agency. And I just want to be cognizant. I know we're just talking about it, but just knowing that a bunch of people they don't know every weekend are showing up and their kids are out playing in the yard and who are our new neighbors and what do they got. And I know we can't control and you can do what you can, but we need something with some teeth that says, like if they have a different party like that out in that same subdivision, what are we going to do? I mean, it's just like, oh, we're so sorry, that's just, we can't control what happens.
Do they have an HOA
Well, they're trying to revive that. And I think
that
these
says you
discussions are
cannot
good.
have any rental property? Because we've got several HOAs that say you cannot have rental property.
No, and I think that's
period.
great, because I think the neighborhood needs to make that decision.
So I was just wondering for the person that you're speaking
Well, out
of,
in
is
the
that
county,
part
we've
of
got a bunch of, like, people in my district that are 5-acre tracts that are in a subdivision, but it's not HOA. There's never been anything really organized and kind of.
Do they need, so just out of curiosity, because this came up when we were working on the ordinances originally, should they have to get a conditional use permit?
To host an Airbnb or any
If
other
you
platform.
are in a neighborhood, you expect it to be residential. But we had talked about, the idea was, do they need a conditional use permit?
Typically, you have to have a conditional use permit.
That's a
I don't
good-
know if you- I
that's
don't
a
know
good
if you have
question.
If you have an in-home daycare, you do.
But like the went to a house 4 or 5 down from us recently, they moved out and they turned it into a long-term rental. Like, they don't have to get a conditional use permit, right?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking, that's what
No, they
that's what
don't.
we were asking
So I
about.
think you get into a slippery slope of, conditional use here, but not here, and what does that look like?
I think the long-term, though, is different because the short-term's more transient.
I agree.
But-
You kind of figure out who your new neighbor is,
Yeah.
and if they're a sex offender, they're registered, people get notified, there's different things that have to happen. On the short term, you don't know who's coming in every weekend.
I think though that everything that I've read in here so far that we've talked about, like we already have ordinances for, like noise, parking, nuisance. I think the answer that we're looking for is people need to call the authorities quicker, and there
And how
needs
does
to
that
be.
get reported in a way that gets back to like this house has had 5 violations that we can specify and say you're getting booted?
That
I
is
mean,
going
that's
to
the
be
whole crux.
I mean,
communication.
I agree.
That's
but
gonna be
I feel like we're I mean, there's
communication
already,
between entities.
everything we've said here is we already have. I think
It's
you're
good.
hitting the main point is when the sheriff's deputies or the PD or code enforcement go out, how does it get back to,
Right, do they go out and count people at night? Like, oh, they had 20 people there. I mean, you're going to,
Well, I think if you got a call, you would. But
Yeah, you can get with dispatch, right? And get how many calls to.
yeah. But I think Kelly's question is, how does somebody take it from you all or dispatch and get to, I don't even know who, Revenue Commission? I don't even know who
Right.
to get it to. But how does it get to the people it needs to get to? I think that's the process we need to have on writing.
So like on the third nuisance call to an address, a noise violation, nuisance, or criminal for that matter.
But I do have
Well, like,
another.
who investigates to see if there's a violation?
Yeah,
of this? Like,
so that's
No,
the whole
thing,
issue.
right? Because he goes out and he's like, no, this isn't, they've got a radio playing and the neighbor's being unreasonable. Like,
So
So if somebody complains about a place, who will check with dispatch and say, hey, how many calls have you had to this?
the way I understand the cities is somebody has to be willing to make a formal complaint. This is so different from the criminal side. If you're doing something criminal, it doesn't matter whether you're a local or a visitor. you're doing something wrong. But a complaint, they would have to be willing to make a formal complaint.
To who?
They would make that to, I guess, code enforcement or maybe even to you. I just know that it has to be, they have to be willing to make a formal complaint. And then it will be looked at and reviewed. Some people are going to make complaints that just because one's beside them and they just don't like it. Those are not going to really, be in consideration. You're just going to be like, that's just how it is. But for those that are truly doing something wrong, somebody has to be willing to file a formal complaint. At least that's how the city's is. And then it is reviewed.
And
it is reviewed by several people. So I would be there,
But that's just the
revenue,
hard,
so
like,
forth.
We were talking earlier, at 1 o'clock on a Saturday night, somebody's making a bunch of noise. You can file a complaint Monday with code enforcement, but nobody was there to hear it unless you call maybe somebody.
Looks like it'd be the code enforcement based on the existing ordinance that they enforce the.
I think that's the
But
process
that's what you would do if you were
I
a
think that's already
resident.
in place.
If somebody was having a big party
So
by your
it's
house that
ordered.
lived by you, you're going to call the police.
I think,
Right.
I think
You're
that's
going to do the
process
same
we need to
thing
figure out better.
either way.
Violation of any section.
But
We
it's
just
just-
need
it's
the police
subjective.
to make sure that
It's just
we're aware of
subjective.
it.
Chief Nettles goes out there and says, yeah, this seems a nuisance or not. And I guess somebody needs to put that in a report so the neighbor has something to stand on when they have it 3 or 4 times. But
And that's if they're going to make a formal complaint, that's exactly what they're going to need, is to have something like that. It just isn't going to be a he said, she said.
right.
So what I'm hearing from you all, no, go ahead, Cam.
Well, I was just gonna say one other thing about the phrase parties. Like, I don't know what that means. So it says a clear statement that no parties may be hosted. You're gonna either have to define what a party is or you're gonna have to take that out, in my opinion. Just saying. I think provision A and provision C are fine, which has to say what the maximum number of occupants are, and it has to say you can't, you have to adhere to all the ordinances and regulations, but to say you can't have any parties, like, that's pretty vague. What's a party? I mean, what's your thought on that?
Like if
Like how you
we
define
all
it.
went for my 90-year-old, my wife's 90-year-old aunt's birthday party to the beach.
beach.
So would we have gotten a,
Be
what
gathering
everybody,
to
most
be-
people were in bed by 7 p.m. Would we would be in violation?
Exactly.
So with that said, and Cam, if you shouldn't have it in there if you can't define it. And, but that was what was in the cities, and I think Jefferson County has
Yes.
something about that as well.
And several other communities too.
Yeah.
And it's not defined. I'm not asking, let me be clear,
Yeah, I
I'm not
understand.
asking
We're
for
just having a
that.
discussion,
I'm
yeah.
just going over what are some of the others and things that other communities are doing that might be possibilities to help you all out.
I think we need to look at really Section 10, for like what Kelly and their issue is. If they're having continued issues, what does the enforcement and who? Because that's where it seems to be the miscommunication of.
So allow Cam and I and maybe Jeremy to work on some language to send you all this week about that. Do you want? Kelly wants a cap on total number. I feel kind of torn because if somebody has 6 bedrooms and they've got kids and a family and they're coming in, I hate saying, and then the enforcement piece of it.
Even
but
a church group is more than 10.
Yeah.
A lot of times a youth group,
But in
a lot of
in
the
the court
teams
here, it says
for
adults,
that are
it
coming
doesn't
in
say
for the
kids.
most
Well,
part.
too.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh yeah,
Church kids.
yeah.
But,
Hey,
uh,
when all of my friends go and we're in an Airbnb, or a short-term rental of some type, we're there. It's almost a party because we're together and we're talking and enjoying ourselves. But it doesn't mean that we're causing a big ruckus.
Right.
I think.
I agree.
I think it's we just don't want nuisance.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
is the issue,
Yes.
and you want to respect your neighbors. How do we put that on paper? Is
I'd also like to see an appeal process though in here too. Like if, let's say Rob has a rental and somebody does something wrong, he gets a complaint and he goes into his, I don't know who he rents to, and says, these people were horrible, never rent to them again. If he's doing the right thing, how does that look like? What's that look like for him?
Yeah.
Well, he's probably reporting back to the hosting site.
Well, every time somebody rents, you report back to the host. You give them a grade, and they grade us. Like my wife's a super host. That's the best you can get. So every time somebody rents, she has to give them a grade. So that tells you what kind of renters you can get. But the one question I have is, I heard just a minute ago, if the police are called out, then that's going to be a report. So if somebody's playing loud music this week, that's a police, and the police get called out, that's a report. Somebody's loud music, it might be loud to me, but it might not be loud to Ryan. Does that make sense? So the police got called out, so that's a report. So 2 or 3 months later, that they get called out again, now I'm at risk of losing my host agreement to be a short-term rental. How does that work? Just over somebody
That's what I'm
playing
saying. I think
music
there needs to be an
loud or
appeals
something.
process.
We can get
too.
into the weeds, but it looks like to me, Ryan, that like the existing ordinance says that the enforcement is like pursuant to our existing code enforcement ordinance, which contains appeals process in it.
So you could appeal.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that'd be covered in there.
On page 3 of your ordinance, it talks about the appeals process for the host.
What
I mean,
what you're speaking at is
the difference between loud music and what happened out there, that they should have just been pulled.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it's
They should not be
subjective
allowed to even have it.
to anybody, but I think that's why you'd have to rely on some sort of report from the police to like, yes, this did seem to be a nuisance, or no, this wasn't.
it's a
slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope, and we're just trying to talk through this and like, what can we do to add some teeth to it, but not chew up somebody that's made an investment and it's trying to do what's right, and you have a couple bad renters, and it takes away your ability to have that revenue stream. I respect everything you're saying.
Because I'll tell you, we've had some long-term renters that were horrible compared to what we've had as short-term.
So Cam and I will try to talk some more. If y'all have some more thoughts, let us know. I just I want to keep this conversation going because it needs to be, the pleasure of the court needs to be addressed, and then we can move on and get to other matters. I have no other new business. Thank you. Lori, you have anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say something. One, I just want to remind everyone, our hosts are fabulous. They want good people in there. They look to see what the rankings of the people of the visitor. They're looking at that. If somebody's got a 3, they're not taking them. They want those 4.5 and 5-star people staying on their property. Occasionally somebody slips through, but they do their best to ensure that that doesn't happen. And I just want to say something about our ordinances. We were the first for our size community and smaller to have a short-term rental ordinance. And I want you all to know how good it is. Cam, you may not know this, but
Sure I don't.
you may not know this, but Devin knows this. Devin knows it. KLC has used our city and county ordinance as an example for other communities to use. STS Marketing College, which is the Southeast Tourism Society Marketing College that everybody in the tourism industry goes to, they use our ordinance as an example. So I want you all to know, Cam and Devin have done an awesome job. And I hand this out to people all the time. I get calls all the time. Can you share your ordinance? We've been told you all have got one of the best in the state. So I want to make it clear, we have a really good ordinance as it is. But there's always going to be things that come up that may need to be addressed or just talked out. So I just wanted to give Cam kudos, and I want you all to know you all did a good job when you did the ordinance. So
it's very appreciate that commentary, and then this is just a very tough subject. I mean, it's not an easy one. I have no other new business. Does anyone else on the court have any new business?
You want the meeting for the sheriff's office? Do you want to? say
Yeah.
anything about that.
Well, we're going to meet at 11:30, and just an update. The new steel contractor that was supposed to be there Wednesday did not mobilize. He had to finish up an existing job, and he has pledged to DeVere that he will be there on site on Monday with a full team. We're going to meet at 11:30 at the road department, and we're going to meet with DeVere and just, I need some assurances that we're going to have some movement here, and that's what we're going to try to communicate. Anything else, Rob, you want to mention? And then EMS, JR and I have been out there a couple times this week, and EMS, block walls are going up. They've got, like 15 people out there working, and it's moving forward. And then yesterday afternoon and the day before, they were down here working on the piers. The steel is supposed to be shipped in on the farmers market by the 19th. So work on that is progressing. That's going to be very exciting too. The farmers market, the footprint of that it's impressive. It'll be very nice, and we won't lose any parking. I think we actually gain a little parking, and it's going to be good. And then I'm very optimistic that I met yesterday with the project development board. Corky from AOC shares that the contract has gone through AOC. It's now being uploaded, so we're very close to getting that to where I can sign it as the chair of the PDB. The executive committee can meet and approve signing it, and then they'll mobilize and get working on the Hall of Justice. So I have no other new business. Anybody else have any new business? Any reports? Anything you want to share? If not, then any community member, any citizen have anything to address with the court? If not, then would there be a motion to adjourn? Motion. Second by Kelly. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.